Welcome to yet another episode of Alt Schwift X's Game of Thrones Abridged. Today we are reading Jon 4, A Game of Thrones. And this chapter, in this chapter, Jon is all sort of settled in to the Night's Watch. He's sort of made his friends with like Pip and Gren and Halder and all those guys, and he's spending time sword fighting and having a jolly old time. It's like that bit in Harry Potter where Harry is just sort of settled into life at Hogwarts. He's made his friends with Ron and Hermione, and they have a jolly good time magicking about in all their magicking classes, in their charms and their transfigurations and their potions. But what happens in this chapter is that we have a new element introduced in the form of Samwell Tarly, who's basically the Neville Longbottom of Game of Thrones. He's the sort of awkward, pudgy, ill-fitting, coward character who the protagonist, Harry Jon Snow, makes friends with. He makes the heroic action of being nice to the Untermensch. And that's how you know he's a hero. That's what happens in this chapter. So basically they're sword fighting and having a good time, and Jon is like teaching the other recruits and stuff who he had been unpleasant with before, but now they're mates, and Alistair is still a cunt because he's the Snape. Alistair Thorne is the Snape of this situation. The teacher who the hero has all the stuff in the wall. It's all Harry Potter shit, man. But they're just having a sword fight, and then Sam Tarly turns up, the fattest boy that Jon has ever seen, and he's awkward and plump and sweaty, and he's sort of standing around not knowing what to do. And Pip sort of speculates on where he's come from, and they notice a striding huntsman on his surcoat, which of course represents House Tarly. We meet House Tarly in Season 6 of Game of Thrones, Randall Tarly and his wife and children. Randall, the famous for being one of Westeros's great cunts, one of the great pricks of the world is Randall Tarly, and this is his son Samwell come to the wall. And yeah, Samwell has brought his own armor to the Night's Watch, all shiny and new, which is of course how you know he's a dork. This is actually more like a high school. This is like Mean Girls. Well, no, it's like in the In-Betweeners when Will has his shiny briefcase that he brings to school. That's how you know he's a dweeb, and that's what Sam Tarly has done. But they talk about how, well, he needs to wear the black armor of the Night's Watch. So Donal Noy, the one-armed smith, has to make some black Night's Watch armor for him, chuck away the old Tarly stuff, because you lose your identity, your old family identity, when you come to the Night's Watch. And Donal Noy has to make this big armor for the gigantically fat Sam Tarly, and he looks ridiculous in his reshaped armor, like an overcooked sausage about to burst its skin, which is a lovely description. And Sam is now expected to join in the drilling, the fighting, the sword practice, and it doesn't go well. Basically, Sir Alistair just orders Holder to just beat the shit out of this tubby Samwell boy. And there are lots of bacon puns. A lot of pork jokes happen because Sam is piggishly fat. And it just sort of goes on and on. The fat boy is beaten. And it's pretty unpleasant for everybody, but mostly for Sam. And Jon, being the Harry Potter hero archetype, tries to defend the defenseless Samwell, but Snape, Alistair Thorne, says, nah, you gotta keep on beating him, because as a bad guy TM, I delight in the suffering of innocence. And then they defend him. So Harry goes up and sort of protects Sam, and there's sword fighting descriptions, but Harry's sticking up for the weak Samwell. And Alyssa engineers this ridiculous game where they have to fight to protect Sam. It's all a drill, of course. No serious, life-threatening violence here, but there certainly is a bruise or two happening. But he gets beaten up, and he introduces himself as Sam Tarley of Horn Hill, and John's like, so after it's all over, John is like, why did you just lie on the ground and cry while the men were beating you with sticks? And Sam Tarley was like, oh, well, you see, I'm a coward. I'm just shit scared of everything, and I'm basically useless. Sorry. And it's when somebody apologizes. The line is, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be like I am. And that's really about as low as you can get when you're apologizing for your existence, for your being. That's how you know you're in a bad place. Sam has been sent to a place that's all about your sort of manliness and martial strength and toughness and ability to withstand boredom, and Sam is ill-suited to such a place, but here he is. So anyway, after all that nonsense, John has to go and do some errands. The errands are better at Hogwarts, I think. At the Night's Watch, they just have to, gravel the top of the wall and to sharpen axes and sort things and make... It's a bit dull. He looks at the wall, and John wonders what Tyrion would make of the fat boy. Which is an interesting thought, because Tyrion is, of course, a fan of cripples and bastards and broken things that are ill-fitting and ill-made. Sam Tarley is undoubtedly one of them, so I wonder if Tyrion would have advice for Sam. Tyrion's advice for John was, of course, to be what you are, to wear it like armor, and no one can use it to hurt you. So what does that mean for Sam? Be fat and proud of it. That's not going to get him anywhere. He could probably do with some jogs around Castle Black, and that might solve a lot of his problems. But we don't hear any advice from Tyrion. We just have John standing about. And he goes into the common hall. It's like the evening meal, and the boys are hanging out. It's like Mean Girls again. So everyone's sitting at their tables in the cafeteria, and all the cool kids, all of John's mates, are hanging at the cool table, but Sam is sitting on his own, eating his lunch on his own. Sad. #low energy. And John, of course, being a Harry Potter hero, takes the incredibly noble action of speaking to the social outcast, and he sits at the bench and he's like, yo, what's up? I'm cooler than you. I've got a dire wolf. Fucking yeah. And Sam's like, shit, what? Is that a dire wolf? And they sort of have that chat. The dire wolf is like a really obnoxious tattoo. It's like this thing that is immediately noticed about John, and that he has to sort of explain, and it sort of makes him look tough, but it's also kind of ridiculous. Anyway, and John sort of takes an interest in Sam, and they go out and they have a chat, and Sam expresses the sentiment that he didn't think the Night's Watch was going to be quite this shit. And John, you can sort of tell that John sympathizes with that, because John thought quite the same thing. John is good at John is good at sympathizing with people who are different to him, but finding those commonalities. He does it with the Wildlings, he does it with Ygritte, he might eventually do it with the White Walkers. Anyway, done that tangent. So, talking with Sam, and Sam really is out of his depth here. He says that he never saw snow until he came to the north for the first time on his way to the Wall. So Sam is not only, ill-fitting for the Night's Watch, but he's a southerner. He's from the Reach, which is the more sort of temperate area of Westeros. It's not dawn, but it's warm. And here he is at the fucking arse end of the world where, people sleep on ice blocks for breakfast. And anyway, so yeah, Jon is sort of sympathizing with Sam's being uncomfortable. And Jon sort of asks Sam, well, what the fuck are you doing here, dude? Like, if you're such a coward, if you're so afraid of the cold, what are you doing at the Night's Watch? And Sam doesn't quite answer. But then Jon, Sam cries, and then the direwolf Ghost comes and licks his tears off. The direwolf comforts Sam, which is pretty adorable. It's like a Disney movie. One of the 2D animated ones, the hand-drawn ones. It's like Bambi. But Jon opens up first. So Sam is kind of unwilling to tell his story first. So Jon opens up and he talks about how he feels about Winterfell and how he misses his family a bit. Well, he doesn't say that directly. He talks about a dream that he has of being in Winterfell, and he's like calling out names, trying to find the Starks. And this seems to sort of represent Jon's attempt to have a Stark identity. That's, of course, one of Jon's big sort of conflicts, is wanting to be a Stark, but not being a part of the family fully because he's a bastard. And he also thinks about Uncle Benjen. Benjen Stark is still missing. But the dream continues, and the dream involves going down into the Winterfell crypts, the dark, deep, mysterious crypts, and that seems to be like a centrally important place in Jon's dreams. And he's like, oh, I'm not a Stark, this isn't my place, but the old kings of winter, blah, 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 and it's all very, don't really know what it means. Some people think that it means that there's some, like, artifact of great importance inside the Winterfell crypts, something that might prove that Jon Snow is the son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark, or maybe it's just a more sort of general thing to indicate that, Jon has this conflict with the whole Stark lineage idea. It could go either way, but the crypts are certainly an important place, as we know from Dance, if only for the the missing swords and the Grand Northern Conspiracy. Go watch that video. But after Jon sort of opens up and talks about some of his feelings, Sam does the same, and he tells the story of his upbringing and his relationship with his father. Now, we probably all know this story. You've probably heard this before, but basically Sam was born, as you are wont to do, and while his father wanted to have a martial, tough, strong son, he ended up with the plump, soft, and awkward Sam. Sam's passions were books and kittens and dancing, whereas Randall wanted him to be a tough knight. And so Randall, Sam's father, did all these things to try and make Sam tough, like making him wear chainmail to bed and bathing him in ox blood, which is an interesting strategy. That was the idea of some warlocks from Karth. Interestingly, I mean, it does seem ridiculous to try and make someone tougher that way, but blood magic, we do know, is like the most powerful kind of magic in Game of Thrones that we've seen. So it's interesting that this kind of attempted blood magic failed when other kinds of blood magic we've seen have worked. And it's also interesting that these were warlocks from Karth who were there. Presumably of the same club, from the clubhouse of the House of the Undying in Karth that Dany had a knock-in with. Those warlocks get around, actually, because we also know that some of them end up captured by Euron. On his ship, the Silence, and get involved in his schemes for the worse. It should do a video on the Warlocks of Karth sometime, because they are interesting, but we don't really know anything about them. Anyway, so yeah, you sort of heard the story. So Sam suffered all this abuse at the hands of his father, who wanted to shape him into something that he's not. And it's fucking tragic as well, because, like, on the one hand, we've got characters like Sam, who just want to do more, I don't know, intellectual or artistic things, who have families who demand that they conform to the masculine ideal of being a fighter dude. While on the other hand, you've got women like Arya, who want to do like the martial warrior thing to some extent, but they've got families who are saying, no, you have to be a lady, you have to eat lemon cakes and smile about it, So there's obvious commentary here about, the suckiness of a deeply gendered society. Hashtag topical. And yes, so Randall eventually, so frustrated with his son's failure to be a tough Captain America, eventually threatens to kill him and says, "I'm going to kill you, or you're going to join the Night's Watch. So that way, my other son can be the heir to my legacy, because you're not worthy." So that's horrifically cruel, and Sam joined the Night's Watch. And John sits and listens to all this, and he doesn't really have any words of consolation or advice, but there's clearly a connection here, a really nice moment, a touching moment of Sam and John acknowledging each other's pain and forming a bond. It happens all in the space of 2 pages, because you can do it like that in a book. And what this represents is Harry Potter making friends with Neville Longbottom, which, as we all know, is very helpful in the end when Neville Longbottom cuts off the head of the snake with the special sword. Will that happen in Game of Thrones? Will Sam Tarly run in with Heartsbane and behead Drogon? Sources say probably. I also mentioned Daeron. So Daeron is one of the members of the Night's Watch, and he's noted for his lovely singing voice. Maester Aemon describes Daeron's singing voice as sounding like honey poured over thunder, which is a real nice description. But Daeron's interesting, because Daeron is the same Night's Watchman who ends up on that boat with Sam and Maester Aemon. And Daeron abandons the mission and abandons Sam and Aemon, and abandons the Night's Watch and decides he'd rather have a good old time in Braavos, singing and whoring with the sailor's wife. And Arya, in the end, kills Daeron. Lots of interesting, funny connections with that kid. But I think it's slightly interesting that Daeron is a bit of a shit, what with the whole abandoning Sam and Aemon thing. But that he also has this beautiful singing voice, like honey poured over thunder. You'd never guess that this random mentioned quaternary character in the first book would have this interesting role way back in the 4th, tangled with Sam and Arya. But there you go. But no, I also always find it interesting when a character who's a bit of a baddie has redeeming qualities, like having this beautiful singing voice. Not all the pretty people are evil. Not all the ugly people are bad. Other way around. You know what I mean? Anyway. Oh, and there's also another boy who sings sometimes called Toad. But his voice sounds like piss poured over a fart, which is lovely. What would that sound like? So John has made friends with Neville Longbottom. He goes back into the cafeteria, into the Mean Girls cafeteria, and he says, "Yo, new plan. We're gonna be nice to the dorky kid. And when we have to do fighting, we're actually not gonna beat the shit out of him for no reason." And everyone's like, "Gosh darn, what a thrillingly good idea." Except for this one guy, Rast. Rast is the designated shit kid of the group. He's Malfoy, isn't he? Rast is Malfoy. He's the one guy who's always just a bit of a cunt. So Rast says, "Nah, next time we're doing fighting, I want to carve off a slice of bacon pie for me, little old Rasty, because I like my pork sausages." He doesn't quite say it like that, but he refuses to go along with John's plan. So, in the middle of the night, John and Du Bois, they sneak up on Rast and threaten him with a dire wolf and say, "Go with our plan and don't attack Sam, or we'll gore you with a dog." That didn't happen in Harry Potter or Mean Girls. But the point, I think, is the same, which is that the hero has orchestrated a plan to allow the social outcast to be a part of the club and to not be tormented anymore. And it's successful. So the next time they do the fighting time, they don't beat up on Sam so hard, to the chagrin of Alyssa Thorne. Severus Snape is foiled again. 10 points from Slytherin. And Sam's like, wow, everything's like great for me now. Thanks, John. And Harry's like, anytime, Neville, little Neville boy. And he says, we're brothers. So they have this really sort of like touching moment, and John reflects on like, yeah, the people of the Night's Watch, they're my brothers, and he really feels a part of this brotherhood and this fraternity, and he feels a part of the institution of the Night's Watch, and ain't that grand. And this, of course, connects to all of John's struggles with, he never felt like he was fully a part of the Stark family. So now he's found his family at the Night's Watch, which on the one hand is lovely, because it's like, wow, he finally feels like he's a part of something good. But on the other hand, the Night's Watch is like a military organization of people who are all men and have to stand at a block of ice at the end of the world and do a whole lot of nothing. For not much of a good reason. I mean, there are the White Walkers, but they don't even really know that. They think they're there to stop the White Walkers and the Wildlings, and that's frankly racist. So is the Night's Watch good as an institution? I mean, I can't help but think of all the guys who go and join the army and who feel like they have like a fraternity there, who feel like they have a brotherhood there, which I think in some ways for some people can be toxic. Not to piss on anyone's army parade. I think there's uncomfortable, just making your social ties, wedding them to an institution built on masculine killing people and wasting state resources. So on that note, I'd like to end this episode of Game of Thrones Abridged on Alt Swift X. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We will have more episodes in the weeks to come. Cheers. Get like this montage of him like, look at me doing magic. I'm a wizard. We... Fuck.